So I'm going to make some tabbouleh. Do you guys like tabbouleh?
On the back of the thing, it gives you the protein, calories, and a statistic which I've come to regard as quite useless, the glycemic index.
So why do you think it's useless? Help me to understand.
Because in the first place, when you go to look it up online, you get 93 answers. And the answer is because depending on the stage and the type of preparation and how much of those complex carbohydrates are converted in the cooking or preparation process, the glycemic index can change by a factor of 10.
Wow. That's significant.
Because cooking is a form of digestion. Think about it. That's all cooking is pre-digestion. So where you have something that will go through you essentially intact like plastic because it's got a cellulosic cover on it that, as Katie says, we can't process, the glycemic index can be really, really low. You smash it, you cook it, you put it in some water, you ferment it, all of a sudden all of that nutrition is released, the glycemic index gets really high. So that's why when I started to look at that, I thought, okay, people are gonna care about that. But it's so dependent on so many things that have nothing to do with the original food. Now, there are some things like sucrose and glucose that the glycemic index is meaningful. But for anything complex, it's really kind of not.
So just tell me again how you do. So you boil, you did it.
You boil them like pasta.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of water, like more water than it says on your sheet. You just bring it to a boil. You boil them, keep them at a rolling boil until they're cooked through. So the kamut is 45 minutes to 50 minutes. It takes a long time. I kept tasting it and was like, not yet, not yet, not yet. Once they're completely cooked, you drain them like you would drain pasta in a colander. And then you're gonna put them out on a sheet tray or a cookie sheet. Yep. And just put them in a dry place. Like I put it in my oven that had a pilot light on. But if you wanted to turn your oven on to like 200 degrees and then turn it off, and then put them in there overnight, what that's going to do is going to dissolve, not dissolve, but absorb all the excess water. And so they're going to be hard again, but they're going to be cooked. So you're basically pre-cooking the grains. And then you're going to get a pot of oil. You don't need much. You need maybe 2 inches of oil. 350 degrees. You're going to take your dried, cooked grains, like a quarter cup at a time, toss them in there, they'll puff right up, and then you take a slotted spoon, take them out, and put them out on paper towels to drain them. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 steps.
Yes.
Okay.
Boil, dry, fry. Yeah. And then coat with sugar. So bulgur is one of my favorite things. It's a form of wheat, organic bulgur wheat. What I like about it is that it's so easy to cook with because all you really need to do is just boil water and pour it over the bulgur and let it sit. And I did this about an hour ago, right before you guys came. So you can see the difference. This is 1 cup of bulgur. You have a recipe. This is a recipe on your recipe sheet. 1 cup of bulgur and 1 cup of boiling water. And that's it. And that's gonna just absorb because the bulgur is already pre-cooked. It's already gone through that process that I explained to you with the kamut. They've cooked it, they've dried it, they've dehydrated it, and all you need to do is rehydrate it in order to have it ready to eat again.
One thing to add, bulgur is not the same as white wheat. It is a wheat, but it is a different variety of wheat. So this process, and semolina, for example, is bulgur wheat. You can't do it with regular white wheat. You have to have a bulgur variety. Like there are farro varieties of wheat. Like there's different kinds of apples, right?
But that was, you kind of answered it. So most of this stuff, it's already had that done to it. The hydrating or the
bulgur usually has been. Yeah, it's a cracked wheat. It comes in different varieties of fine, coarse. The coarse you need to cook like pasta. You need to cook it like a pilaf almost. But the medium and the fine bulgur like this, it's already been cooked and it just needs to be soaked. If you were to bring it to a boil and let it go for 10 minutes, it's going to be mush. You don't want that. So in this, have you guys had tabbouleh before?
Oh, yes.
So it's a very herbaceous salad. And the herbs we're going to be using today, we're going to use scallions, we're going to use mint, and we're going to use parsley, and a lot of all of them. And so while our bulgur is cooking, I'm just going to chop all of these things up and hopefully answer any questions that you guys have about cooking, how you should change any recipes, how you can, what kinds of questions do you guys have while I'm chopping?
Have you made what you're doing now with either millet or sorghum?
I haven't, but I don't see why you couldn't. Millet would actually be pretty much the same.
Okay.
So yeah, if you were looking for a gluten-free option, that would actually be really great. The sorghum you'd have to cook. You couldn't just soak it.
Okay.
And the millet you would have to cook too, but not for very long. You could probably cook it for 15 minutes, drain it out, and then use that instead of the tabbouleh. It's actually a really great idea because sorghum has such a nice nutty flavor profile to it that I don't see why it wouldn't work.
Have you all tasted the sorghum? There's a little plate with the sorghum.
Somebody see sorghum anywhere?
Yeah. Maybe we have some downstairs. Let's see when Robert comes back. But the sorghum, yeah, I would cook the sorghum like pasta. You're going to get a different flavor profile and kind of a different. It has a tendency to get mushy because it's very high in starch. So if you were to cook it like a pilaf, it may absorb too much water. So I would cook them like pasta in a bunch of boiling salted water and then just keep an eye on it, keep tasting it, and pull it when you think you're ready.
Sorghum is starchy. Would yeast work with sorghum at all?
So yeast will eat the starch in the sorghum, but the sorghum doesn't have the protein, and the protein is what allows the yeast to hold on to its the CO2 that it has. So, yeah. I know you guys must have other questions. What other questions do you guys have?
Do you put any other herbs or spices in your tabbouleh?
I don't put any spices. I put mint, parsley, and scallions, and then I put the outsides of tomatoes, like not the goopy part on the inside, but the outside of the tomatoes. Lemon juice, 1 garlic clove, and red onion. And then the only dressing it gets is salt, pepper, lemon juice, and olive oil. So all of these things are just going to get chopped up very small. And this is something that's great to make the night before if you're having a party or anything. You can get this done, and it can sit 1 or 2 days in the fridge and actually get better, yeah. Because that grain, that starch in that grain is going to hydrate with all the extra flavor that we're introducing to it. And it's all just going to kind of get to know each other. Did you find some? Oh, great.
Are you all dying for a coffee? I was thinking the same thing. I want to suck down coffee with this.
Oh, speaking of coffee, you guys should take, there's I forgot earlier, I made buckwheat and hazelnut cookies, which I also gave you the recipe for. That's what's in the middle of the table. And those are gluten-free, so you guys have found them, yes. Good.
Sorry, we found them.
No, that's good, that's good. No, I'm glad. So that's something that is kind of interesting in the fact that it's still a crispy cookie, but it doesn't have any gluten in it. It doesn't need the wheat to kind of rise. And, but also I added Parmesan cheese to those. Did you guys pick that up in there at all? Okay. The saltiness, the adhesion, not so much. Although, yeah, I guess it could help. But the, do you taste it? I think it just added a nice savory note to it. You could use sharp cheddar for that as well. Oh, do you not care for it?
No, I love it. I just think
Yes. Yes.
you want to
Yes. So I want to introduce you all to Nader. He created a, a feast for us with grains. And I wanted him to talk a little bit about.
We are excited about your feast.
Oh, thank you very much. This is very much it's Middle Eastern way of cooking the grains. We have burghul with the chickpeas, we have burghul with lentil, and we have quinoa with lentil. We have frika, dried, cooked. We could cook with chicken, and we have the frika soup, which is one of the most popular and favorite for a lot. Frika, yes.
How do you spell?
You have frika here. It's also called green wheat, and it's on your sheet. And there's a paper here with frika here.
E-E-K-E-H. Mm-hmm. So we're using bulgur today for this, but he cooked it in a different way, so it'll be nice to see different varieties. If you guys would like to, should I?
Can you just pass it around?
Yeah.
What are we going to serve the soup in?
I have small containers down here. They're not glamorous, but I have.
Oh dear, those plastic. Do we not have any little paper bowls? Can I send Robert for paper bowls? Could you get some paper bowls from downstairs, honey?
And then, do you guys need
Which one is this?
This one is the burghul with lentil.
Okay. Here we have, and again, you guys just have your little papers, plates, and your spoons. This is bulgur with lentil.
That one, if you like, we do have sauté onion. It goes with that.
And sauteed onions on top of the bulgur and lentil. Can you pass that down, honey? Yes, thank you.
This is the quinoa with lentil.
Quinoa and lentil? Lentil, yeah. And do you put the onion on this as well?
On that one, it cooks with it.
Okay,
And
so
just give it-
the onion is just for the bulgur and lentil.
How did you do the onion?
You chop it sideways and you put it with the avocado oil and let it brown and get softer. Yes. This is just frika, and we do, when you cook the frika, we have mostly chicken that you cook, bake in the oven and goes on the side with the frika.
Frika is also called green wheat. It's African wheat, a very, very, very ancient grain that's just really now getting popular, thanks to people who think they have celiac disease.
That's just tasty.
And what's the orange one?
This is burghul with chickpeas and crushed tomato.
Oh, that looks delicious. Bulgur with chickpeas and tomatoes.
This is the frika.
That's just plain frika. And is the frika cooked in chicken broth?
The frika side, chicken broth, avocado oil, sea salt, and a dash of mixed spices.
Okay.
The frika soup is with chicken broth, chopped onion, and avocado oil, sea salt, and a dash of mixed spices too.
Did not expect.
We lighten up on the spices because I heard that you don't like a lot of spices.
Here, Robert, can you help?
Is that good enough?
Sure. This is frika soup, again, avocado oil, mixed spices, and chicken broth, I believe.
So this is quinoa. What was this?
Bulgur. Did you get some of that?
Is it, that's the same, aren't they?
No, this is
No,
quinoa.
this is quinoa. And the other is bulgur with lentils. You know, one of the things to notice about the Mediterranean foods is the combination of the grass, which is the bulgur, with a lentil, which is a legume. And the combination of those two plant varieties give you a complete protein. You'll notice this with beans and rice in Hispanic cooking. So these people have been eating a plant-based, very highly nutritious diet that features the combination of these incomplete plant proteins in combination, which do make a complete set of amino acids that we don't produce and we need to consume in our diet.
So do the onions go on everything?
No, just the first one. just the bulgur with the lentils. Did everybody get bulgur and lentils and quinoa and lentils?
I cannot believe how good it is.
I'll leave these up here in case anybody wants to get some more.
Christine, you serve this downstairs already prepared?
We serve different things already prepared, but if you guys really like this, we will do anything you want.
This
We
is
will.
beautiful.
I'm so impressed.
This right here is
I cannot
beautiful.
believe how good it is.
Tasty.
And aside from a little fat in the chicken broth, this is very, very low in fat. Yes, there are some carbs in there. We need carbs to live. And there's also nice tomatoes in here, which is nice lycopene.
And this meal.
This is just cooked frika this is just the frika grain in chicken broth and some spices.
So good.
Have you tried any of that veggie broth instead of a meat broth?
With these, because they go with chicken mostly, we use just the chicken broth on
I
it.
have one daughter vegetarian and my other daughter's vegan, so I use more veggie broth.
I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. And
That's delicious.
this is Katie's tabbouleh. Did everybody get a tabbouleh around?
It is delicious.
And Katie, this was
That was toasted rice.
toasted rice. Again, toasting anything just adds this beautiful base note to things. Did everybody try some toasted rice and the toasted flour? And again, if you haven't tasted the grains, I really encourage you to eat them raw because that's the way to taste the differences in the flavors of the grains.
Tabbouleh is superb.
Yay, Nodder and our own Katie.
We do have more, please enjoy. And if you have a question, the wife sent me the whole thing, the whole recipe.
If you think this man did this, he didn't.
The only thing I did is the dishes.
Would anybody like some more soup? Would you like more soup, anybody? More soup?
I haven't even tried it.
How about if I just pass?
Some in the cups already. Okay.
Nodder, do you brown the frika before you make the soup or not? Okay.
Most of the freaking, all that you have to do, it depends where you get it from. You just have to go through and make sure that there is no seeds or hard and shelled freaking.
Okay.
Because they're cracked, they're green, they're cracked, and sometimes they miss. So there's the hole, just take them out without.
Nodder raises an important point for those of us who are not from countries that rely entirely on heavily processed foods. If you go to get, like I was going to say, get feed grains, there's rocks, there's hulls, there's random other kinds of grain from whatever they processed in there. That is the way the rest of the world lives. So when you get these old grains, unless you get them from like Bob's Red Mill, which process them like we're expecting, do take a little bit of time and clean them. You know, sometimes you'll get beans that you have to clean. Just understand that's a part of the cooking process. And our joy at finally having these wonderful old foods available is that they do come from places, unlike the US, who still raises real food. And they don't have the health and safety fixation that we do. So you do need to be a little bit careful, like Nodder says, and just look to make sure that you get the rocks and stuff. None of that will hurt you, all right? It's just, you might, it's like getting an eggshell that's in your, it's not going to hurt you. It's just a little bit unexpected.
The tabbouleh is lovely.
Thank you.
It's
Thanks.
very bright.
How refreshing.
One more thing about the picking through and making sure there's no holes or anything, but some things do benefit, especially quinoa, from rinsing before. Like you rinse them, rice especially too, if you rinse it, because a lot of them have bitter compounds that are on the outsides, and if you rinse it in cold water for a minute or two, you kind of eliminate those. And when people think, I don't like quinoa, it's a weird flavor, a lot of times it's because it wasn't rinsed properly. So that'll help a lot with the palatability for people who are a little bit more finicky.